Oh, the weather outside, it's awful. Really awful. It has been raining for weeks now. Of course, not like continually, but the dry spells are not long enough for me to film, and I don't want to get my equipment wet. One other reason that I wanted to film inside for this particular subject is because I have this. It's a book from 1953, the same year as de ramp, or the disaster, happened. It's the watersnoodramp, the biggest flood in current history. And it's going to be triggering. I'm going to show a lot of pictures of this book. It's going to be quite horrendous. So I'm already talking about people dying, animals dying, people losing like everything they have. Spoilers. But if you think this is a bit too much for you, please don't watch this. It is a part of Dutch history that really shaped the country. So I really want to talk about this. But yeah, watch with care, okay? It is a foreword of the then Dutch Queen Juliana. De ramp die ons volk getroffen heeft, vervult ons met onuitsprekelijke deernis. Het doet goed te zien hoe allerwege eendracht en de handen ineen worden geslagen om verlichting te brengen in de ontstellende nood van zoveel landgenoten. It basically says that it was such a bad thing that happened that every person in the Netherlands was coming together to help these poor people that were hit by the big flood in 1953. It was in February 1953 that there was a spring tide, there was a full moon, it was storming, it was winter, and it was very much a night that the water was unstoppable. Saturday, the 31st of January, basically the 1st of February, the dikes, the parts of the Netherlands that we are so proud of that hold back the water, couldn't hold the water. The flood had already hit the UK and it was going to hit Belgium as well, but the Netherlands, who has its name because it's lying low, you know, the Netherlands lies on average 1 meter below the sea level. If something is going to happen, it's going to happen big. So what happened was that all the dikes along the coast, so North Holland, South Holland, Zeeland, they broke. And the water was streaming in for hours, for days. It was 1953. It was a couple of years after the Second World War ended, and the technique in the Netherlands, like radio, wasn't that far ahead. We had radio, we had communication, we had walkie-talkies, etc. But for example, radio stations didn't air at night. And even if people could send messages and if it was received, the sea was on average almost 5.6 meters higher, about 18.4 feet higher than average. So you can imagine that a dike who's only used to take like 3 feet to 12 feet couldn't hold that. Back in the day in 1953, Flevoland did not exist yet, as I have told in another video. So cutting out Flevoland entirely, 20% of the Netherlands back then was below sea level. 30% of the Netherlands is actually around sea level, like 1 meters above mainly, so and the rest is like really hilly. In the end, 1836 people lost their lives in that flood. And most of the damages occurred in the province of Zeeland, which is on the southwestern part of the Netherlands. It is riddled with water there, and the defense was really important. And with the defense like not offering there, a lot of people drowned, and a lot of people lost their houses, lost their income, lost their livestock, everything. Mainly the provinces of South Holland, Zeeland, and even parts of North Brabant were heavily affected. And like I said, because the radio station didn't air at night, a lot of weather stations didn't operate during the nighttime. Alarm bells that could have come from the National Weather System arrived too late, and a lot of people were unable to prepare for this flood. During the time, a lot of people came to help. And with everything being flooded, including the telegraph stations and the local radio stations, amateur radio operators actually came into the affected area to set up a network so people could be contacted. In the province of Zeeland alone, the dikes were breached on 67 places, and all these places had to be repaired in like no time, basically, in order to actually keep the land from flooding. Not only the houses were affected, of course. A lot of land was suddenly drowned in salt water. Zeeland and South Holland are well known for their agriculture, so a lot of agriculture was lost as well. Back in 1953, the costs of everything, like losing everything, was already over $1 billion. Next to all the Dutch military coming to help, a lot of people volunteered to help, getting people from the rooftops of their own houses, trying to get people from their houses if they hadn't drowned yet. People were in need of shelter, people were in need of clothes, food, and everything. But also people from Belgium were coming to rescue, people from America even, England and other countries like France were also offering to help, usually with helicopters, military people, volunteers, etc. Even His Royal Highness Prince Bernhard was trying to rescue these people. He was in a helicopter trying to search for anyone who survived the flood, who was living on their rooftops. A lot of people did not survive, unfortunately. The people who did not prepare, who were like surprised by the water, drowned. People who were on the rooftops were suffering from the cold because, of course, it was winter in the Netherlands, or they just didn't have any fresh water, they didn't have any food, and they were not discovered before they perished. In the book that I'm having here, they are like summarizing all the things that were lost, like a lot of percentages of like agriculture, grassland, orchards, potatoes, that kind of stuff. Another thing, of course, is the livestock that were getting housed there, especially cows that were in their winter shelters and the farmers couldn't get to them. So, like, they estimate around 150,000 cows drowned in there. Zeeland has its own breed of horses, and a lot of them, very famous horses, drowned as well. They couldn't be rescued because, of course, the farmer couldn't get there. They were of less priority than the people who were suffering there. I'm looking in the book. It's horrifying but interesting to see how things were back then during the flood. So this book has all the pictures that were taken of people helping, but also people in need that they couldn't help. People trying to close the gaps in the dikes with sandbags, with everything they had. Women who just gave birth to their babies, because of course everything just moves on in life. Elderly who were barely alive. All these pictures are in here, and it is such a monument of the time there. You can you can see how they dressed during that time. A lot different from, of course, how we dress now, but a lot of cultural dresses as well. So especially the women and some of the young children, you can see in clothes that you now only see in tourist attractions in Amsterdam. So you can dress like an old Zeus women with like the hat and the dress and everything. Another thing that I find really interesting is how they write in this time, because the Dutch spelling has evolved as well. So next to all the atrocities that's is in this book, so this book was made to actually get help from people, get donations from people, so like the survivors of the disaster could get more monetary support. That's why it's basically summoning up everything they've lost, every disaster that happened, making it very personal. There are personal stories in here as well. From like history point, it's very intriguing how it shaped the Netherlands, because it started up the Delta Works, one of the most modern world wonders, some say. We are checking the dikes more regularly than even then, because of the threat of flooding. This year, in 2021, we actually had some floods. We had some floods in the southern part of the Netherlands. We had some almost floods, and people were afraid, like really afraid. People had to get out of their houses because of the threat of the water. So it's not a thing that's only in the past, but this book, The Disaster, can show you what will happen if we do not pay attention to our waterworks, to our dikes. So yes, this was another more gruesome story, but it is a story that could be relevant. Like I said, in 2021 there was a flood, and there will be more floods, especially if the sea level is rising. Here in the Netherlands we take a lot of care of like our dikes and our waterworks, but maybe we should do it a bit more. But only the future will tell. See you next time.